Going live. I am live. Okay. Hi, guys. My name is Joe, and this is Fighting Words, the martial arts library. Specifically, this is a thing I do once a month called Tangent Tuesday, where I talk about whatever I want to talk about, which is why it's Tangent Tuesday. This month is going to be pretty easy because I have gone on a shopping spree lately, picked up several new books. So tonight I'm going to get to those. I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to pick which books I actually review first from this list, although it won't be the next review. Some of these take a while to get through. So you can stick it around until the end and let me know which one of those you want to see. But before that, I have a few brief channel announcements. First things first, I have hit the 200 subscriber mark. So I appreciate you guys subscribing to my channel. I really do. This is a labor of love, but it would be nice to get paid for that. And of course, part of that is getting subscribers. Shout out to Benjamin Galbraith. I apologize if I'm screwing up your name. I see you sharing my videos around Facebook. And every time you do that, there's a spike in views and usually a couple subscribers joining up after that. So I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys, following me on this journey where I review every martial arts book ever written. Not really, but close enough. So that's number one. Number two is I now have an Instagram account, and it is about half of it is, look at these books that I'm reading now, and I'm going to review this book this week. And the other half is look at my cute little kitty cats. So, please join if you want so you can see some of the backstage, behind the scenes stuff, and also look at my cats because they're cute. So that information is on my homepage on YouTube. Off the top of my head, it is at fighting.words.ma.library. I think. If that is incorrect, I will retroactively correct that in the description here. Another announcement: on Tuesdays when I'm not doing the live chat, I'm releasing shorts, the YouTube Shorts format. I have already recorded 7 that are sort of in the queue and ready to go. I've decided that I will be moving away from that somewhat. Now, I'm still going to be doing videos on Tuesday. They are going to be brief and probably unedited. But I have felt like I haven't been able to elaborate as much as I want in like the 55 seconds I have to tell you about the thing I'm recommending, because that's mostly what I use it for, is recommending usually other YouTube videos, sometimes other articles. I don't like that. You guys need to see my hands. Okay, here we are. And that's my cat's tail. It's Harper. Anyway, so in addition to that, I usually also put links to that stuff in the descriptions, and I don't think that's as accessible when I'm doing the shorts as when I'm doing just regular videos. So, yeah, they're going to be like less than 3 minutes, probably less than 2 minutes. But I will be moving to that in a couple of months, so not a huge change. The other thing, the final announcement is going to be for, oh no, she's not scratching at anything. She's just literally scratching the surface of the bookcase. I announced a couple of months ago I was going to begin doing Media Fight Mondays. And Media Fight Mondays was I was going to basically do a react video to a fight scene from a movie or a TV show or animation, although I don't think I've really picked anything from animation to do that to yet. And so far I've released 1, and that's because I didn't look up how to do react videos. So what I was doing was I was recording me reacting to the video, and then I was editing the video to try to sync up my reaction to what was going on, and it was just super editing intensive, and this is a labor of love, but I don't love it that much. It was really hard. So I've recently looked up how to do React videos. That process should be smoother. Um, I'm excited about this. I'm excited about the idea. And once we get that going, I think you guys will enjoy it. I'm going to take a, a fight scene, sort of do play by play. I'm going to grade it on like realism, but also grade it on like how it plays out in the grander story, because I think that's something that's important. I think a good fight scene should tell a story, and when I do my reviews, we're going to explore that a little bit too. So, on to tonight's video where I go over all the books I just got, and it's a bunch. So, using my brand new webcam, because if I was using the GoPro, it would probably overheat. So here we go. So the first book is Mind Gym by Gary Mack and David Castevens. This is, oh, glare. All right, that's better. So this is on sports psychology. And it occurs to me that I have a mirror image. Didn't know I was going to do that. Anyway, see if I can fix that real quick. So this is on sports psychology, and I know a lot of people in martial arts. The second you hear sport, you're going to go, that's martial arts aren't sport. Okay, right, but we can learn a lot of stuff from modern sports psychology, modern sports science, and I can't do it. Okay. Anyway, but this is full of things that will help us better understand what's going on in our head and how to deal with functioning under pressure. That's what sports psychology is. And as you can imagine, as a martial artist, this is very valuable stuff. So, next one, Unarmed Combat by Martin J. Dougherty. And this, actually, when I first got this, I was a bit hesitant because it looked really similar in what it covered and its illustrations to this book, which is Extreme Unarmed Combat by the same guy. So luckily they turn out to not be the exact same book. This is similar to Military Combatives. Its actual full title is SAS and Elite Forces Guide, Extreme Unarmed Combat. This, you'll still see some illustrations of guys in what looks to be maybe BDUs, but also it'll have a much more civilian-oriented take on things. So that's that one. Karate Kata, Heian and Teki 1 by Mr. Nakayama. So he was a prolific Shotokan teacher. This is the official manual of the Japanese Karate Association, or at least it was when it was published. I hesitated to get this, not because I think it's bad, but partly because I think it's redundant. I have a lot of books like this, and frankly, Shotokan, yeah, I got more than enough information on this. When it comes to the performance of the kata, the illustrations are pretty good, though. I was also hesitant to get it because I thought it was a book in a series. As it turns out, it is. There are 4 more books in this series going over all the Heian and Teki kata. It is good, though. He also did Dynamic Karate, which has a similar color scheme. But yeah, I don't like getting one book in a series. I'm a completionist. I want to get all of them. And speaking of Shotokan Karate books by Mr. Nakayama and being a completionist. Use me, Harvard. Yes. Oops. Best Karate. This is an 11-book series. These are 5 books, 1 through 6, minus number 4. I'm okay with beginning this series because it is excuse me, it is a classic series. So I'm happy I was able to get these. I will be picking up the other ones later. The thing about books in a series, when it comes to reviewing them, sometimes I will review books in pairs. There's one set of jujutsu books that I'm going to review as three as part of the set because the final book is sort of a summary of the first two. But anyway, for these, I'd have to review one at a time just based on their contents. And unfortunately, that means that I can't start anytime soon. Although, if I did start, um, I could probably get book number 4 here before I'm finished reviewing book number 3. But yeah, I am disqualifying these from the hey, which one of these do you want to see reviewed first? Because they are books in a series, and I'm already in the middle of reviewing 3 series of books. That's the Bruce Lee Fighting Method series, Mark Hatmaker's No Holds Barred series, and Jeff Thompson's Real series. And I am 2 books into all of those. And I want to at least finish one of those before I begin on another series because I sort of feel bad that I'm not reviewing them as frequently in order for to sort of maintain continuity as I'd like to. Anyway, next book is Savat by Bruce Tegner. Okay, so I know not many of you have seen it because it's still got only about a dozen views, but a few years ago I reviewed not a few years, a few months ago I reviewed a book on low kicks, and in that book it referenced 2 different methods of chambering the leg. In other words, a preparation motion before you kick. One was the karate method, and one was the Savat method. And I mentioned during that review that I have many resources on Savat dating back to like the late 1800s. Savat, the modern sport of la boxe française. I've been to seminars, I have instructional videos, I have tons of books, mostly on PDF, but also at least one on hard copy. And the mechanics that they were using in that book didn't match the mechanics in any other resource I had. The only book that book referenced on Savat was this one. And sure enough, Mr. Tegner is using that very, very peculiar mechanic of swinging the leg away from the target before then swinging it toward it. So I've actually already read this and written the outline for the review. I'm a little bit hesitant because to a certain generation, the thing about Mr. Tegner, he was a very prolific author during the 60s and 70s. So for a certain generation, he was their introduction to martial arts. The issue is I'm going to have some negative criticism about this book. And it might get people's hackles up a bit. I'm not doing it to take shots it's not personal, right? It's never personal. It's not like that guy should, go do something bad to himself. I'm trying to keep this PG, right? But it's almost never directed at the author. It's the text that they are giving, right? And the fact that this stuff doesn't match up to any other Savat material I have, the fact that he seems to be cribbing some stuff from karate, that might rub some people the wrong way. So I guess I should prepare for some of that. It's not a bad book. I just don't think it's authentically reflective of the martial art of Savat. Anyway, A Fighter's Heart by Sam Sheridan. So I actually have A Fighter's Mind. I actually prefer that book. A Fighter's Mind, I think, gets you more into the psychology of fighters, but a lot of people are fans of this book, which is a big part of the reason that I decided to buy it, because I knew people were going to be interested in a review of this book. They like talking about it. it's very much about his um, going to see different fighters and talking about his reflections of their experiences. And it's about, yes, a fighter's heart, pushing through hardship. That's what this book is about from a narrative perspective. So it's true to life, but it's also not really an instructional in the way that I normally review stuff. So that's that one. Foil Fencing by Muriel Bauer. This is actually a gift, a sort of hand-me-down from uh, my sister and my brother-in-law, more accurately from my brother-in-law. Yeah, my sister never owned this, but I find fencing books valuable in how we can translate the principles to empty hand fighting. Famously, Bruce Lee was influenced a lot by works on fencing when it came to things like timing and footwork. And this also actually has a lot of stuff on foil fencing, including like how to physically prepare yourself. And is this even 100 pages? It's barely over 100 pages. And actually, it's got a neat little quiz in the back. So I like that. I also have this nifty little list of the WMC Brown Sports and Fitness series. And now I'm looking at other books on things like judo, karate, and wrestling that they put out. So I might look for some of those because this seems very compact, but also rather thorough. So I'm curious to see how the other books would measure up in this series. Harper. Harper sniffing the stack of books I got. Training for Sudden Violence by Rory Miller. This is going to be very similar to my review of Solo Training by Lauren Christensen. It does give many, many, many drills. There are not very many illustrations. So when I review it, unfortunately, usually if you guys have seen my reviews, I'll take pictures from the book to stick in the reviews. There's not going to be a whole lot in reference to this, but I am very excited to address it. He has worked as a corrections officer. He's worked in mental health. I think he has a classical martial arts background, but is also trained in some sport grappling. So I am curious to see what he has presented here. I flipped through it a little bit, and some of the stuff has caught my eye in a positive way. So that'll be neat. That's the thing. We all have techniques. They are simply moves. But incorporating the drills, how do we take this move and use it? How do we incorporate it into a practical setting? That's why I like exploring different methods of training. So this is Krav Maga, Tactical Survival by Gershon Ben Karen, or Karen. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that. Guys, I like to get my pronunciations correct. So that's why sometimes you'll see me hesitate on pronouncing something or pronounce it in multiple ways. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm trying to be thorough. I'm already a big fan of this just because it's got, actual color photos, and it actually goes very in depth. You can see that. See it a little bit. Long explanations on principles behind what's going on. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this and just seeing. So we have defense against armed assaults, defense against unarmed assaults, pickups and throws. That's like right at the end of the book. That's interesting. Throws against armed assailants. Okay. But, basic combatives, strikes and defenses at the beginning. It'll be interesting to see. Chin Style Taijiquan, The Source of Taiji Boxing by Davidine Saiwa Voon Sim. God, I can't pronounce that correctly. And David Gaffney. as a confession, I get the least excited about like Taiji, or and also like the stick fighting aspects of Filipino martial arts. I like the empty hand stuff. I like the blade stuff. Short stick versus short stick, I just don't get excited about. And then for whatever reason, because I like the cousin arts of Xingying Bagua, but for whatever reason, even the Tai Chi books that I recognize, like, oh, this is very interesting. This has some good information in it. It's just hard for me to get excited about, and I can't tell you why. I wish I could figure it out. Because again, some of the stuff I've seen, I'm like, oh, that's some good stuff. And then I'll put it down and forget about it for years. But this one, this has got some interesting ideas. Among other things, um, it includes a variety of weapons, like the weapon I typically associate with Taiji is the Jian, which is the straight double-edged sword. But I see this includes things on the spear and also the Dao, the broadsword or saber. It's got a section on push hands. Um, the fact that it's subtitled "The Source of Taiji Boxing," there are at least 3 styles of Taiji, probably more, but I'm familiar with. I'm aware that there's Qin style, Yang style, and Wu style, and I'm wondering if they are going to make the case that Qin is the original style. I don't know enough about the history to tell one from another. I just think it's an interesting little tidbit. Um, but yeah, because this one seems to cover a lot of different topics, including some I don't normally associate with Taiji, or some that I really associate with Taiji, this one might hold my interest for a little while. Time for some water. I'm sorry that the image is mirrored. I wish I could fix that. But I decided to use a new webcam instead of the GoPro because I think the last live stream I did, the GoPro overheated. And I, I don't think there's a way for me to fix that problem with the tools I have available. Anyway, Is This Legal by Art Davey. So this is about Mr. Davies' experience in the founding of the original UFC. This is all about UFC 1 and the build up to that and a little bit of the aftermath. He's an ad guy. He does advertisements, and um, it's interesting. But I've been getting a lot of resources about the early UFC events. I'm going to be doing some myth busting. I guess I'll go ahead and spoil it a little bit. A few years ago, Jesse Encamp, who's the karate nerd, I'm a subscriber to his channel, but a few years ago, he did an interview with Bill Superfoot Wallace, who was a commentator on the first UFC. And the title was The Gracie UFC Conspiracy. And again, this is nothing personal. I've met Mr. Wallace. I've got 2 of his books on my shelf back there. My interactions with him have been pleasant and memorable. With that being said, a lot of people are taking the things he said in that interview as gospel. When even while I was watching that, I'm like, I know that's wrong. I know it is. So a lot of the stuff that he says there are contradicted by other sources, including your own eyes if you watch the event yourself. But I am composing a response to that, but I want to make sure I dot all my I's and cross all my T's and have as many resources as possible when I address it. And this has been very insightful to that end. This is another one I actually read when I picked it up. He's a very entertaining storyteller. Martial Arts Techniques for Law Enforcement by Mike Young. Mr. Young apparently has a background in karate, boxing, and a little bit of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. Yeah, the ground stuff definitely seems influenced by that. I'm curious. I think I've actually avoided buying this before. Before I had this channel, I am a bit of a completionist, but it was one of those things I'm like, I don't see anything new in here. I don't see anything specifically for law enforcement. But that was just sitting in the bookstore and flipping through it. Maybe I'll see something in this. Um, I don't know if you can tell by the cover, but a guy's throwing a low kick and he's reaching out his hand as if to do a traditional downward block. Um, that's generally not advised. So, again, I'm curious to see how this book stands up in terms of practical application and how much of it seems oriented specifically towards LEO tactics. So we'll see. I mean, it's all interesting in its own way, right? Even if I'm sort of dubious as to what the final product's going to be, I do want to go on that journey. Also, Opening Closed Guard: Origins of Jiu-Jitsu in Brazil by Robert Drysdale. This is actually a companion piece to the film. Is the film just called Closed Guard? Yeah, Closed Guard: Origins of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is a documentary film. I haven't seen it. I don't know if it's available yet. This is primarily interviews with people in the US, in Brazil, and in Japan. And he's really trying to get to the history. Yeah, let's see. US, a lot in Brazil, in Japan, then back to the US. And interviews some members of the Gracie family, as well as their students, as well as I think some people who were maybe rivals of. Yeah, because we got Elio Fada in here, and the Fada lineage was not part of the Gracie lineage. So, this will be interesting. He's got a reputation for, at least in the making of this documentary, of ruffling some feathers in the establishment, and I like that idea. So everything deserves some myth busting, including the Gracies. More water. All right. These two books are on a similar topic. I'm just going to go ahead and cover them both at once. A History of Shaolin, Buddhism, Kung Fu, and Identity by Liu Zhaojiang. Again, I couldn't have pronounced that correctly. The Shaolin Monastery, History, Religion, and Chinese Martial Arts by Mir Shahar. Is it Mir? Anyway, these, when I was looking for resources on the Shaolin Temple, on the history of the Shaolin Temple, there's a lot of it that has been mythologized. I got a little bit of that in Chinese Kung Fu manuals or Chinese martial arts manuals. Which one is it? I think it's Chinese martial arts manuals. It's a historical overview. It's one that I did recommend in one of my recommendations things. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff that we've been told about the Shaolin Temple in pop culture that is apparently not all that historically accurate. These are both like actual scholarly texts. They've been reviewed, peer reviewed. They have a bunch of references. And Harper is playing with a string. If you hear a noise off to the side, Harper loves strings. Each cat has their own little thing to play with. Shadow prefers the little squishy balls, but Harper loves strings. Now she's fighting a string. Anyway, this is supposed to be, as I understand it, more of a broader idea. And this one is supposed to be focused more on the martial arts relevance of the Shaolin Temple. These are both part of a larger project. Again, I like the idea of myth busting. I have all these resources. Most people haven't read the stuff that I've read. It's not a criticism of other people. It's just saying I have a problem. That's an addiction to knowledge. And sometimes when I encounter people online. I'm like, well, according to this source, that's not exactly true. It gets some pushback, and it's understandable, but it's also because people just haven't read the stuff that I've read. So, um, I am eventually, I don't see it happening for at least 2 years, perhaps longer. I'm eventually going to do a book sort of, or a video sort of myth busting the things that we've been told about the Shaolin Temple and go with these more historically accurate sources so that we can have a clearer view of what actually goes on there. Of course, that'll probably ruffle other feathers on my own. Oh, his name is covered up. This is by Wang Guangji. This is Chinese Kung Fu. This is part of the. I know it's part of a series. But it is translated from the original Chinese. This is more of a. Oh, yeah, here it is. Introduction to Chinese Culture. So there's a series of books on the introduction to Chinese culture. This is a very broad overview. And it is also, yeah, just scarcely over 100 pages. Um, two big challenges to the history of martial arts, for instance, and wushu and Chinese culture, wushu and regimen. Very, very, very broad overview, but is also apparently told from the perspective of someone who is not a martial artist. And that kind of thing has value in its own way because as martial artists, I think we come into these subjects with our own prejudices, excuse me, and our own audiences that we're trying to share these things with. And sometimes we forget that somebody who is not familiar with martial arts may not really get what we're saying. So I think that sometimes when we see martial arts from the perspective of a non-martial artist or a new martial artist, it can give us a better idea of what we're actually doing. So this is going to be nice. Ninjutsu, History and Philosophy by Dr. Masaki Hatsumi. I actually have this on PDF, but it's easier for me to read things that I can physically carry around. I can read this on my lunch, easy. So Dr. Hatsumi is the Grandmaster of Tokagure-ryu. He's the head of the Bujinkan Budo Taijutsu. And he includes a lot of stuff in here. Again, history, philosophy, or history and technique. So there's a lot of both. Actually, a lot of technique. But this is going to be an interesting read. I do have a few of his books, but most of the books I actually have are by Stephen K. Hayes, who is featured in here, although who is now, I guess, persona non grata in the Bujinkan. And as a side note, there's been an interesting development in the Bujinkan in the last year or so. Dr. Hatsumi has named his successors to the different branches of it. So instead of being like having everybody united under one, it's interesting that, okay, this is the newest, grandmaster of this style that is under the Bujinkan. This is the newest grandmaster of this style under the Bujinkan. I'm probably getting some of the terminology incorrect, but yeah, he seems to have named a different successor for each of these schools under the Bujinkan. Okay. Deadly Force, Understanding Your Right to Self-Defense by Masad Ayub. So Mr. Ayub is very prolific in the realm of armed self-defense. And I don't know a whole lot about armed self-defense, to be honest. I want to get more into that. I want to investigate it more, educate myself. I do have actually a number of good resources for that. Like people I know and have studied under. But this covers more of the legal standpoint, which I think is important for anyone involved in self-defense. Obviously, if you are carrying a firearm, you have at least the potential to use lethal force at any moment. So it's important to know when you should do that and when you shouldn't, which seems to be equally important, but a lot of times ignored. So, yeah, this is again more on the legality of stuff. I think entire chapters are dedicated to various, yeah. So, chapter 11 is, for example, State of Arizona versus Larry Hickey. And chapter 10, State of Florida versus George Zimmerman. You know, real life cases that he's going to be covering from a legal self defense perspective. I'm hoping that it has a broader utility than simply armed defense. You know, for those of us who do not, you know, carry around firearms all the time. This is Seishin Shuyo, Mental Training in Traditional Martial Arts by Jimmy Lockett. So, as I mentioned, we have, you know, back at the beginning when I started all this, we have a thing on sports psychology. This is a more traditional take on some of that. This has, you know, for instance, how to how to increase your concentration and the importance of concentration and meditation. And, you know, it's got a chapter on yoga. Um, yeah, again, a more traditional approach to the same things apparently that sports psychology is trying to accomplish. So I feel fortunate that I got both of those at the same time. Maybe if I read them concurrently, I'll be able to do a good compare and contrast. Let's Get It On, The Making of MMA and Its Ultimate Referee by Big John McCarthy. Hello. Okay, that's Shadow. Shadow doesn't make appearances very much. Because she is a shadow. She's like a ninja. Anyway, so this is more biographical because a lot of it covers John McCarthy's life before he actually, you know, got involved in the UFC and became a referee. And again, I got this for it's primarily because of its behind the scenes look in the first few UFCs when the Gracies were involved. But also, I remember flipping through it as well when it first came out, and yeah, it's got some interesting stories, both as his time in law enforcement and his time working for the UFC. Oof. The Sword and the Mind by Hiroaki Sato. This is rather brief. Now it actually includes, what are you? You're not an index. Anyway, includes things from both a technical, a tactical, and a psychological perspective. And very traditional approach to Japanese swordsmanship. So it's going to be interesting to read. And again, going back to the fencing book, I think that there can be a parallel between sword fighting, or really any kind of weapons fighting, and empty hand fighting, which is what I happen to be most interested in. Although I do think sword fighting is cool. Martial Arts for Dummies by Jennifer Lawler. I have to confess, every time I get a For Dummies or Idiot's Guide book, I feel a little bit embarrassed because I am neither a dummy nor an idiot. But anyway, I do have two other books, at least two others by Ms. Lawler. One is Dojo Wisdom, which is more of a philosophical, you know, lessons you can learn in the dojo kind of thing. And another is, I think, The Secrets of Taekwondo. It's a Taekwondo book. I think it has secrets in the title. Anyway, this is very much, you know, if you don't know anything about martial arts, here is an approach and all the different things you might learn depending on the type of martial art you get involved with. So I think it's going to be a very good general reference book. And finally, Breathing for Warriors by Dr. Belissa Ranch and Brian Sabin. Sabin? There's a wrestler by the name of Sabin. Chris Sabin, right? Anyway, this is about monitoring and controlling your breath and your breathing patterns. Hello, Shadow. For physical activity, there's a lot of like combat sports oriented stuff in here. It's going to be interesting. They have several exercises as well. And this is constructed like a textbook, and I think it'll be very valuable. Master your breath to unlock more strength, greater endurance, sharper precision, faster recovery, and an unshakable inner game. That sounds like a lot to deliver on, but the fact is, breath control is something that you will get a little bit in traditional martial arts. You don't see it as much outside of that, but it has become, to varying degrees, big in the realm of like soldiering. Snipers famously have to control their breath. Athletes have to focus on their breath. I'm looking forward to seeing how this can apply to what I do. So that's the last of them. If you think any of these books should be looked at for review first, again, excluding Mr. Nakayama's karate books, I'm already knee deep into 3 different series. We're not going to start any new series until I finish at least one of those. But if any of those books pique your interest and you're like, you should review that next, it obviously won't be the very next review, but I will try to get a review that is requested, let's say 3 times or more. The most requested review within the next couple of months. So most of those books, it shouldn't take me too long to sit down and actually get to. As I mentioned, I've actually already gotten the outline for the Savat book. But with some of them, like either of those Shaolin books, those are going to take me a second. I mean, I love scholarly texts, but they are dry as sandpaper to read sometimes. So anyway, let me know if you guys want me, if any of those books stand out and you're like, you should review that one next. I'll try to do that. But anyway, this is the end of my live stream, and thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you later.